Whenever I've been to air shows in the past, I've always loved the fast jets, I love the commercial airliners, the high adrenaline aerobatics, but when it comes to the historical aircraft displays and you see those older aircraft putting their way across the skies, I'll be honest, I've found that a little bit uninteresting in the past. I'm here at Brisbane Airport for the night because I've got a flight tomorrow morning and I've got a couple of hours now on the ground, and what I thought I would do is actually use this time to pay my respects to a legend in Australian aviation, one of those aviation pioneers who made air travel possible. But the bus is free. I'll take the bus. All right, thanks for your help. Change of plan. I was going to get the air train to the international terminal. That's $5. The bus is free.
International transfer bus.
That's what we want. So I've been a huge admirer of this pilot for many, many years now, throughout my entire flying career, to be honest with you. But I will be honest, and I feel bad to confess this, but I didn't realise that his record-breaking aeroplane, the one that many of you will be familiar with, is actually preserved and based here at Brisbane Airport. If you want to come and visit this place yourself, it's about a 5-minute walk from the international terminal. There is a path, but as you can see, just be warned, if it has been raining heavily in Brisbane, we're just going to have to go on the road for a second. So, like, if you're visiting with kids, in all seriousness, it's a bit of a walk from the terminal to the memorial here, but we're almost there. And there it is. I can see it up ahead. This is a place I've been wanting to visit for quite a long time, actually. This is a very, very special aeroplane to the world of aviation. So this is the Southern Cross. This is the first time I've ever seen it with my own eyes. It's a Fokker Trimotor, that's the aircraft type. 3 engines, it burnt petrol, regular MOGAS, that used to put in the cars back in the 1920s, 10 to 12 gallons, I think, per engine it used to burn per hour. There were no brakes on the aircraft, and it really is just amazing to think that an aircraft like this could make it all the way across the Pacific, especially like in the 1920s, the late 1920s.
A flight of the Southern Cross spanning the Pacific Ocean began on the morning of May 31st, 1928 and started from Oakland Airport, California. The weather was good and the first 6 hours of the flight to Honolulu went well, but by 3 p.m.
This is such an important aircraft. If you love air travel, if you've ever flown anywhere, to be honest, in your life, you owe a lot to this aircraft and the pilots that took it across the Pacific back in 1928. So it was Charles Kingsford Smith, Charles Ulm, and 2 other pilots. They took off from San Francisco, they flew all the way across to Hawaii. That's pretty much half the Pacific in one hop. Then from the Hawaiian Islands down to Fiji, and then from Fiji all the way across to the east coast of Australia, landing not far actually from where we are now, a place called Eagle Farm, which is very close to where Brisbane International Airport as it stands is today.
A portion of the exhaust carried away, shattering the starboard propeller and forcing Smithy to turn and make for home. For half an hour, this work of gambling with death continued, and each time oil was transferred and the engine slowed down, the plane plunged towards the sea. Then safety, as welcome land was sighted and the old bus headed home to Mascot. Smithy makes it again, the world's greatest airman and conqueror of every sea.
There's a path around the outside of the memorial that you can walk around as well, which I'm just doing now. And the nice thing about this is it's right in the middle of the 2 runways. They built another runway here in Brisbane back in 2020, and I think there's someone landing behind me. There's a Qatar 777 just landing behind me as well. So as well as coming down to see the memorial itself, you can do a little bit of plane spotting whilst you're down here too. Now, Charles Kingsford Smith, not a rich man in any sense of the word, and of course, especially in the late 1920s, it cost a lot to get an aircraft and fly it across the Pacific. So it was actually an American businessman, a guy by the name of G. Allen Hancock, who bought Southern Cross and gave it to Kingsford Smith to fly across the Pacific. but the engines were actually provided by someone else altogether. Now, if you know anything about Australia, if you've ever been here, you may have seen a department store called Myer. If you know Melbourne, or if you've ever seen any live music in Melbourne, you may have heard of the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. And it's that Sydney Myer back in the 1920s who actually paid for the 3 engines you see on the Fokker Trimotor behind us, which enabled Charles Kingsford Smith to make that historic flight across the Pacific. After his exploits in the Southern Cross, Charles Kingsford Smith didn't stop flying then. He actually picked up another plane. He flew from Australia all the way to England. He flew from England across to the USA. He then flew from England back to Darwin, and I think he did that in 9 days, which in the early 1930s was an incredible record as well. And between 1929 and around 1935, Charles Kingsford Smith continued to fly, continued to break aviation barriers and set aviation records. But towards the end of his flying career, some of the flying took a toll on him, and it was said that he did start to struggle with some of his aviation. In fact, he started to suffer from what we know nowadays as panic attacks when he was flying across large open stretches of water. And in fact, the Kingsford Smith story has come to quite a tragic end, because in 1934 he lost his good friend and fellow pilot in Southern Cross, Charles Ulm, in a plane crash. And then in 1935, that's when sadly we lost Sir Charles Kingsford Smith in an aircraft accident just somewhere off the coast of Burma. Our aviation world these days is very heavily regulated, and rightly so, because we want aviation to be as safe as possible. But back in the days of pilots like Sir Charles Kingsford Smith, Charles Ulm and all the other pioneers from back in the day, it wasn't about making it as safe as possible. It was really just to see if it was possible at all. I think I owe a lot more to those aviators of the past for letting people like me, and probably people like you, do what we do today. I think I need to show them a little bit more respect in the future at the air shows that I go to. I definitely think I will look up into the sky and watch those historic aircraft fly by with a lot more gratitude than I have done up until now. Really glad I came here today.